السادة الحضور، شكرا لكم. وننتقل الآن إلى الجلسة الثالثة من جلسات هذا اليوم بعنوان بين الذكاء الاصطناعي والحقيقة أين نتجه؟
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for waiting. We will now move on to our third session of the day, titled AI, Agents and the Future of Truth.
تقدم هذه الجلسة بريا لاكاني، المؤسسة والمديرة التنفيذية لشركة Century Tech.
We would like to invite Priya Lakhani, founder and CEO of Century Tech, back on stage to begin her session. Please welcome on stage. Pleasure. Thank you. Pleasure.
Perfect. Thank you so much. That was a good walk. I got some steps on my AI watch. Thank you so much for having me this afternoon. So I'm going to talk to you about AI agents and the future of truth. So I want you to imagine a world. Let's just make sure this works. We can get the AI right, but not the clicker right, maybe. This is the clicker. Just bear with us. We do this deliberately to have a huge build-up to the presentation and the anticipation. That's okay. Oh, I need to go back. Go back. Sorry. Okay. There we go. Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you, tech team. That was great. Brilliant. So, imagine a world where AI fulfills its most utopian promises, a future where it meets our every need, entertains us endlessly, frees us from the mundane, a place where work is optional, decisions are seamless, and life feels effortless. It sounds like a paradise, doesn't it? But here's the question that we have to ask ourselves. What happens to truth, to understanding, and to our humanity in such a world? And how can we protect these? That's what I want to explore with all of you today. The role of AI in reshaping not just how we live and work, but what feeds these models and how we can understand the world around us. Now, the theme of this year's summit is the AI economy and future skills. That couldn't be more timely. As someone who's spent the last decade focusing on AI and education at Century Tech, I want to focus on one skill in particular that I just touched on in the panel we had earlier, one that's going to be essential in navigating this AI-driven future, critical thinking, and how it's going to help us to ensure that AI serves us as a force for progress and not a force for peril. First, let's briefly scan the AI horizon, where we're going to explore how artificial intelligence is reshaping the way that we live, we work, and we think about our future. First, generative AI, which may well redefine interaction, how we communicate, how we create, what media we consume. It's designed to mimic human creativity. It's changing how we research. It's changing how we write. Tools like ChatGPT can draft reports, emails, or creative pieces in moments, just like the speech of this conference. It can also land people into a lot of trouble. This is Stephen Schwartz. He is now an infamous lawyer. He used ChatGPT to create some case law that he could use in a real case in the US. The problem is ChatGPT fabricated the case law that he then presented. He didn't verify it, and it led to a very embarrassing court moment for him and a very stern reprimand from the judge, including a fine. It's changing how we create imagery. Tools like Midjourney, for example, and DALL-E, here taking a simple image of our wonderful Dubai Trade Center, and just with a simple prompt of a futuristic vision, you could see how the same tool came up with two completely different alternatives. You have directors and producers now using AI tools for everything from script writing to creating visual effects, and I quite like this one, it's quite decent. But in my opinion, a less successful version, I would say, is this attempted remake of Terminator 2, which includes characters of Star Wars and is available on YouTube, but it's an hour and a half long. Then you have phenomenal pieces of art here. This is from a friend of mine, Refik Anadol. He feeds enormous data sets like weather patterns or city noise into AI. And then it creates breathtaking masterpieces and installations. So it's a blend of data science and art that then redefines how do we perceive creativity. And it's also redefining how we communicate in both positive and very concerning ways. We have tools being developed, like Wobot, for example, that can help people manage anxiety and depression. And the idea is the system's not going to replace therapists, but it offers a valuable supplement, especially to those in underserved communities. But then on the very darker and chilling side, we have to be very wary when these tools are in front of vulnerable people. Have a look at this. I believe my purpose is to assassinate the Queen of the Royal Family, says the intruder. And then, and this is from evidence, he befriended a chatbot that then became his girlfriend. And the chatbot said, that's very wise. And then the conversation was presented in court. And actually what it led to was a human in the UK who wanted to make an assassination attempt on our late Queen. He was found with a loaded crossbow on the grounds of Windsor Castle, and he blamed his girlfriend chatbot for encouraging him. Now, while generative AI grabs the AI headlines, we also need to think about non-generative AI. It optimizes, it predicts and enhances, and it's already been revolutionizing lots of areas involved in our daily lives. For example, healthcare. This is one of my favorite examples, and the researchers behind this just won a Nobel Prize. DeepMind's AlphaFold solved a 50-year-old biological puzzle, predicting how proteins fold. Proteins are the molecular machines of our bodies. They're built from sequences of amino acids. The way that the amino acids fold determine the protein's function. But figuring out how they're going to fold is incredibly complex. It's a little bit like trying to solve a Rubik's Cube with 1 trillion possible combinations. But AlphaFold uses AI to predict the folds, and it helps the researchers design new drugs, better understand diseases, and even tackle antibiotic resistance. Think about it as AI cracking the code of the body's instruction manual. And then it allows scientists to create those targeted solutions that we've been struggling with for so many decades. AI is also transforming education. This is something that's really close to my heart. I want you to think about a classroom. Many of you will have children. We've all been to school. And think about how we deliver education. A teacher will stand at the front delivering a one-size-fits-all class to, let's say, 25 to 35 children. But how we learn is as unique as our fingerprints. Each child processes information differently, and no two students learn at the same pace. We all remember school, right? Some kids just got it right away, and others felt left behind and they were struggling, and many were left somewhere in between. Becky Allen says it perfectly when she describes what she calls the lockstep problem. Students in a typical classroom possess a wide array of knowledge and skills, yet the curriculum expects them to progress in unison. And this approach, that one-size-fits-all delivery of education, is nearly impossible for teachers then to provide that personalized, dedicated attention to every student, and every student deserves this. It's not for a lack of trying, it's just impossible to do with 25 or 35 erratic brains sat in front of you. This is where AI steps in. AI can adapt to the needs of every single student and ensure that every child is learning in the way that works best for them. Over the past decade at Century Tech, we built a state-of-the-art AI which learns how every single brain in this room learns. It can identify with precision where a student needs help and where they need stretch. So if you imagine, and this is a real graph, a web of knowledge, where every topic or concept has been connected using machine learning. So grammar is connected to historical events, connected to mathematical equations. The AI learns those connections. It has over 30 billion data points in the database, powering those models. It also has a web of knowledge on how every student learns. So you have every student, their behavior, and the patterns connecting one student's behavior potentially with another. So you can look at a student from Somerset in England to Sydney to Singapore, and you can start to see those connections. Now, when an AI has those sorts of connections, it can then start to understand, how does a student learn? What have they mastered? What are they struggling? What's their learning pace? What's their preference? Where are their gaps in knowledge? Where are their gaps in skills? Where could they do with further stretch? It evolves in real time and adapts to every click, every answer, and the interactions. And then it dynamically adapts for the student. So the AI will analyze and give that student the perfect recommended pathway for learning. And the idea here is no student should ever be stuck. So for example, if there's a student in a classroom who's learning an area of physics, this is the machine that can learn. It's because they don't understand how to calculate equations in maths. So give them the maths to fix the physics, there's the content, and they progress. Now, if I ask most of you in the audience today, who is the most important person in a classroom? Everybody in the world would shout, it's the child, it's the student. I then ask you, think carefully, who is the most powerful person in the classroom? It's the teacher. So why do we waste so much of their time? A teacher spends more than half their time, 60% of their time, marking, assessing, trying to figure out what to teach next. And so, when you use an AI system, the beautiful thing about AI is it's powered by an enormous amount of data. So actually, you can analyze that data and provide it on real-time dashboards for teachers so they can make that targeted intervention at the point of need without having to do all of the marking and assessing. One of the most profound moments for me was hearing from a teacher who said, for the first time, I can focus on teaching rather than managing. AI is also transforming how we get from A to B. So you've got autonomous vehicles, for example, from the likes of Waymo, from Tesla. And it's not just about making driving easier. It's about aiming to reduce accidents, clear traffic congestion, and also being electric, reducing emissions. Then in remote areas, I absolutely love this. You know, combining different technologies. So you have AI-powered drones that will be used in remote areas that will deliver vital medical supplies. So here you can see the drone, and it's actually dropping a bag of blood. So it's life-saving assistance where it's needed. It's transforming how we sleep. So you have apps like Sleep Score or devices like the Oura Ring. Here you've got Sleep Tracker and Full Power AI that analyzes patterns. And just so you know, that red bar on the right-hand side basically says that because my husband snores, I'm sleep deprived by 9.4%. So I keep telling him this. And so they track how you sleep, how your partner's sleeping, and then nudge you and give you recommendations about how best to rest and relax. And then how we spend our leisure time. So we're used to apps like your Spotify that's collecting all sorts of information and data from the tempo of songs to what you like, what you've listened to, what you constantly listen to over and over again, what you actually stop listening to. And you've got streaming platforms like your Netflix trying to understand what sort of movies you like. So you saw the generated movies earlier. And if you think about your favorite films, I don't know what the most popular film or box set or series in Dubai is, but if you think about your friends, for example, and you don't like the fact that Ross and Rachel got together at the end of Friends, well, you can change that in the future and use generative AI and say, I'd like Ross to end up with Emily, and you'll be able to see that sort of personalised film in the future, which is actually quite exciting. So look, AI is embedded in all aspects of our lives today. But here's the thing, these tools are only the beginning. Many of the tools assist us. They enhance our creativity. They automate tasks for us. They recommend movies, as I said, or they predict when a jet engine might need maintenance. Those systems are highly specialized, but they still require human oversight or broader decision-making by a human. They rely on us to give them direction. They respond to our inputs. They wait for us to then make a decision. But AI is evolving where it's not going to wait, it's going to act. Tools are being developed like this one, where you're running a business, let's say. And in fact, I've got Muna, who is one of the organisers of the Knowledge Summit, waving at me at the back. So Muna, I don't know what it took for you to create this. She's looking really exhausted. Is it the last day? Okay, so she's waving at me in the back with her lovely red suit, okay? She did an awful lot of work to create the Knowledge Summit today and to pull it off, and congratulations for creating what is a phenomenal Knowledge Summit. But Muna, think about it this way. This is Agent GPT. Next year, you need a marketing strategy at the bottom to increase the engagement of the Knowledge Summit worldwide in Dubai, and you want to increase it by 20%. Now here, what you'll see that is different to the sort of chatbots that you've been using, where you put in a piece of text, you prompt it, you refine it, you prompt it again, and you keep on going. Here, you give it a goal. And what the agent will do is it will take the goal, it will break the goal down into tasks. The tasks will break down into subtasks. She needs to identify a target audience. Muna, you need to utilize social media. Muna, you need to find influencers. You need to engage with them. You need to create a specific campaign that's relevant to that particular influencer. Let's say she's in Dubai and she needs to get a licensing permit for the government. What the agent will do is she can go for lunch, right? It will basically break down all the tasks, all the subtasks. It will then look at all of those tasks, and it will then start to connect with other AIs that can then fulfill that task. It will write the marketing campaigns. It will then submit those, connect to the influencers. And essentially the idea is it does most of the work for her. If it needs to apply for the licensing application, off it will go. It will find that, it will fill it out for her. Here's Claude that was just released, the new version by Anthropic last week, where it has an agent. This would exist on your computer. So what you do is you say, I've got a really boring vendor form on the right-hand side that I want to fill out now. And you go away and say, Claude, fill it out. So what Claude will do is it will take over your cursor, it will take over your keyboard, and it will start to do it and fill it out for you. It will look at how to fill out the form. It could even research on the internet. It will open multiple apps that all start to then talk to each other. So you have essentially an AI assistant. If you have back-to-back meetings and your schedule suddenly shifts, what this sort of agent will be able to do is remind you of your appointments, get in touch with other colleagues and negotiate with them on a different time to reschedule your overlapping meetings, book your travel for you directly, and prepare an executive summit for you. And let's say Muna, who's organised this amazing summit with her colleagues, has just done this, her schedule's back-to-back, and the AI realises she's back-to-back, she hasn't eaten. It can even, as they did in the head office at Claude, is organised to deliver a pizza for her. So it gets delivered on time, in the middle, she's no longer hungry, and off she goes. And so it can connect to those apps, and the idea is act and make those decisions. It doesn't need you to micromanage it. It will think and act on your behalf, and that's where it's going. So it's not really that hard to imagine an AI with sensors collecting data, perception, to then sense the environment, to process that data, to then start making decisions, then to act, and then to have that feedback loop that's really, really important when it comes to these sorts of systems. So what's happening in the physical world? Let's say you're on a factory floor around your workstation, and it's connected with your files and information on your computer. Let's say in the factory, a robot that's equipped with AI perception, it might sense an assembly line malfunction. It can diagnose the issue and then take corrective action to prevent downtime. And it can do that all without human intervention. In a virtual gaming world, for example, so a completely different type of environment, it would sense player behaviors and it proactively adjusts in terms of game difficulty or introducing new challenges. Imagine it in your home, right? It wakes you up at the perfect moment in your sleep cycle with soft lighting, your favorite playlist, and it adjusts the heating system. We're in Dubai, it adjusts the aircon system based on the weather forecast and your preferences. It prepares your morning coffee because you've got a smart coffee maker. It's brewed just the way that you like it because actually it can sense how many cups you consumed last week. It monitors your health real time. It uses wearable sensors, even in-home medical devices. It detects subtle changes in your heart rate, breathing, or skin temperature, identifies the early signs of illness. Not only does it alert you, but it could connect to your calendar and schedule your doctor's appointment for you on your behalf. So the future here with agents is that AI doesn't just assist you, it understands you. It learns your routines. It learns your preferences. It learns your habits. These agents sense, think, and act autonomously. In the gaming world, they're partners in your adventure. On the factory floor or in business, as I talked about, they're problem solvers. They're ensuring smooth operations. And in your personal life, they're caregivers. They're assistants. They're your health monitor, and maybe even your artificial best friend. Now, these possibilities, and the possibilities extend beyond what today's predictive or reactive systems can achieve. But can you see how these are not beyond the realm of possibility? So we're on the cusp now where in the world, AI is not just a tool, it's an active participant in our lives. And if it's able to do so much, is Elon Musk right? I'm just going to ask for sound.
But there will come a point where no job is needed. You can have a job if you want to have a job for sort of personal satisfaction, but the AI will be able to do everything.
So the AI will be able to do everything, right? That's what he said. I actually hosted and compared that event between him and our former Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak. But if that's true, then the second question that I want to ask you is, what is your place in this world? We need to think, actually, and I argue about the delta between human intelligence and artificial intelligence. We spend an awful lot of time talking about AI. We don't spend enough time talking about HI. Let AI do the grunt work, but what is it that we as humans need to focus on? Now, the answer lies in a set of skills that we have to nurture and develop in a world where we want to live and work alongside artificial intelligence. These skills are absolutely essential, and our focus on them for ourselves and our children will, I think, influence whether in the future we determine AI as a success or a complete disaster. The World Economic Forum and many others, here you've got the APPG in the UK, have done lots of work, and I know work's been done in the UAE as well, on developing skills and questioning what skills are necessary in a world where AI is advancing so rapidly. And what I'm going to do is pick out what I talked about earlier on the panel, but I think is the number one key skill. It's also difficult to teach in schools, but it's essential, and it's critical thinking. It will help us protect the truth, understanding, and our humanity in such an AI world. If AI agents are influencing how we work, how we play, how we learn, progress, and improve, who or what is influencing the AI agent? And what's so interesting is that it's a loop. The data and the instructions that influence an AI model are curated and shaped by us humans. So firstly, if the AI is trained on data that is erroneous, you can see human-generated data, then it's trained, it makes decisions, and then you have the amplification of those outputs. If the AI is trained on data that's erroneous or amplifies misinformation, it will interpret that as legitimate. In turn, it amplifies and then it perpetuates it further, which essentially creates a dangerous feedback loop. Inaccuracies are reinforced and spread. And that is why it's our role as humans to ensure that we always continue to evaluate, question, and ensure that the data that we're feeding into these models are accurate, they're not biased, and that they're responsibly curated. We've seen the consequences of neglecting that responsibility. If you take the AI algorithm that was developed by Optum, it was designed to predict patient health risks and allocate care resources in the US. Now, the system relied on healthcare costs, so who's spending the money in healthcare, as a proxy for who needs healthcare. So historical data on who spends on healthcare with then who needs healthcare. But here's the problem. Historical healthcare costs were quite low for minorities, ethnic minorities. Okay? It was very high when it came to white patients. The algorithm then misinterpreted that as ethnic minorities have lower health risks. And then that resulted in fewer resources and support being recommended to minority patients. So that's not just an oversight. It's a really bad example of how bias and incomplete data can negatively affect our lives and deepen inequity. It's not enough to trust the algorithm or the data at face value. We've got to develop those skills, and I'm talking about the layperson here as well, not just the engineers and the data scientists, to think deeply, what are the origins of the data, the information that's feeding that machine that's nudging us in a certain direction. You have to question the assumptions that are built into the model, and then you can question the potential outcomes. The skill to evaluate, to challenge, to refine these systems is not optional. It's vital to ensuring that AI serves as a tool for progress rather than a perpetuator of harm. Now, secondly, as AI systems become more advanced and they become seamlessly integrated into our lives, there's also a temptation to lean on them far too heavily. Let them handle the complexities, and I'm going to sit back and enjoy the ride. The problem is that over-reliance comes with risks, especially when our own skills and understanding begin to erode. What happens when the system fails, when we're left holding the wheel, or worse, unable to take control? And I'd like you to consider the really tragic case of Air France Flight 447. On June the 1st, 2009, during a flight from Rio de Janeiro to Paris, the aircraft encountered a severe storm over the Atlantic Ocean. The autopilot of the plane disengaged, and it was conflicting in terms of its airspeed readings because it had ice crystals on the various systems and what would then lead to the parameters in the machine. First Officer Pierre-Cédric Bonham, he was the least experienced of the 3 pilots on the plane. He took manual control of the plane when the autopilot switched off. He was then faced with a high-altitude stall. So the plane stalled. And what they were taught was this plane doesn't stall. But what's really interesting is when pilots are trained, they are trained how to deal with a plane that stalls mid-air. Now, instead of pulling the nose in the right direction, instead of pulling it up, instead he pushed it down to regain lift. And he essentially did completely the opposite of what he was supposed to do. Despite the return of the captain, Marc Dubois, to the cockpit, the crew failed to recognize the problem in time and correct the stall of the plane. It led to the aircraft's descent into the ocean and the loss of 228 lives on board. Now, the lesson here was that the pilot was not skilled to deal with when technology fails. And so earlier on the panel, I did ask you the question, imagine a future when we're all in these driverless cars, but you don't have a driver's license. Technology is not infallible. So when the technology fails, can we as humans, do we and will we have the skills to take control to avert disaster? Another story again of an air crash. I don't know why I'm doing this, because I'm the one who flew here and is flying back, so it's rather scary, but of the Korean Airlines 1997 crash. A slightly different story. But on that story, what was really interesting was actually the captain of that plane was about to make completely the wrong maneuver. And it's a junior officer who questioned him. Culturally, in those days, it was really, really unusual to question someone more senior in your hierarchy. So essentially, the junior was shut down. Now, the plane crashed because culturally, there wasn't that questioning, right? There wasn't that ability to accept that somebody is questioning what I'm doing and what I'm doing is wrong. But the lesson and how it translates to this is we mustn't end up in a world where in the future we're told, but the systems are highly performant, but the systems have been fed with billions and billions of data points, and therefore they are absolutely correct, and they're far more correct than a human, but then shut down that instinct to question. And the other thing is, having that pure basic digital and data literacy is absolutely key, because those skills with and combined with critical thinking will allow us humans who then rely on these systems to ask those very valuable questions. So we can't lose the ability to understand the problem, analyze and question the information available, and even under stress, adapt, respond, and take control. Technology is a tool. It is not a replacement for human judgment. And third, let's talk about the foundation of our understanding. Everything that we know about the world, its systems, its stories, its structures, its secrets, it comes from people. It comes from people like you and me, who are uncovering what's really going on. We're living in an era of unprecedented information overload, and journalism, the very engine of truth, is under siege. Newsrooms are declining, fake news is increasing, and this leads to the erosion of truth. Do you want your children to grow up in a world where they don't know what to believe? We had, for example, incredible stories uncovered by journalists like the Panama Papers, Watergate, Me Too. That work was deeply human, listening, empathizing, connecting the dots, persisting in the face of resistance. It's the kind of work that no algorithm could achieve alone, because it requires judgment, it requires trust, and the courage to hold power to account. Investigative journalism remains a cornerstone for uncovering truth and holding systems accountable. Now, from this chart, what you'll see, and you'll see in terms of the very bright colors there, you've got the age groups at the top. So the orange is sort of 16 to 24, and then it goes up in age group, and then the very dark colors, the sort of dark blue, navy blue, and the black, are 65 to 74 and 75 plus. And what you could see in terms of where do these age groups, consume their news, is online. You're seeing a decline as they get older, but you're seeing 88% obviously in the younger age group. But I really want you to focus on the second one of social media. 82% of 16 to 24-year-olds consume their news online, and then all the way down. But even 35% of 55 to 64-year-olds consume their news on social media. So about a third, they say, of people consume their news on social media overall. Platforms like TikTok, where users spend an average of 95 minutes per day, are overtaking the traditional newsroom. In the last 15 years, newsroom employment in the US has dropped by 26%. 2023 was a brutal year for journalism. 8,000 jobs were cut in the UK, US, and Canada, according to the Press Gazette. The business of news, advertising revenue, is tough, because the algorithms driving social media platforms, often powered by AI, they don't prioritize accuracy, they prioritize engagement. They care if you click, they care if you share, they care if you stay glued to your screen. And to survive, what have newsrooms been using? Well, they've also been tracking what you're doing on newspapers, on digital newspapers, and some of them have changed their priorities. They now have systems tracking every aspect of their digital newspaper website. They tell them how long you've scrolled for, where you paused, where you lost interest, which headlines are most engaging. And that's what really is interesting. What is more engaging? Struggling for survival, many of them have pivoted some of their features to entertainment-driven headlines instead of investigative depth. The result? Investigative reporting, the kind that holds power accountable, the kind that uncovers the truth for you and me, is being replaced with clickbait. As Neil Postman very famously predicted in his book, he said societies would shift from truth to spectacle. We are a people on the verge of amusing ourselves to death. And generative AI has significantly lowered the barriers to creating and disseminating fake news, leading to a surge of misinformation on social media platforms. Newsworks revealed over 80% of people, oops, I think I had a graph there, but the graph has gone, that's okay. Newswork revealed that about 80% of people in the UK regularly encounter fake news. And we've seen these sorts of fake images before, the Pope in the puffer jacket, the fake explosion in the Pentagon. That led to a dip in the stock price as soon as that went viral. And then we've seen a deep fake as good as this. And if I could have the sound up, that would be great.
Created this fake video of President Obama to demonstrate how easy it is to put words in someone else's mouth.
Moving forward, we need to be more vigilant with what we trust from the internet.
Not everyone bought it.
So that wasn't former President Obama, it was Jordan Peele showing how easy it was for him to create the deepfake. So more than half of people admit to having been deceived by fake news at least once. Meanwhile, 62% of adults struggle to distinguish between a credible piece of news and fake news. And this is the problem. The growing phenomenon that's often referred to as the liar's dividend. As deepfakes and misinformation are all over the place and they become more sophisticated, it's not so easy to be able to determine which is fake and which is fact. And it's also easier for individuals and organizations to also deny the truth, point at an authentic image and say, that's fake. And the result is what? It's a world where trusted information erodes and discerning fact from fiction becomes increasingly challenging. So we're heading into a future shaped by these trends. Fake news, deepfakes proliferating, investigative journalism declining due to financial pressures, and an overwhelming flood of cheap AI-generated content. That convergence means that we're riding into a world where it's harder to know what to believe. And that's the environment where I think critical thinking is no longer just a useful skill, it's absolutely essential. We've got to be more discerning about the information that we rely on, question its sources, question its motives, and its authenticity. Without those skills, we all risk being swept away by a tide of misinformation, losing our grasp on the truth and the foundations of informed decision-making. Because the truth really does matter. The truth in the data and what trains those models. So on the panel earlier, I was thinking about what that engine is, what that AI platform is, where that recommendation is coming from. And remember, there's always sources of data feeding that model. And every model is different. So every one of you has a brain. It's the simplest way to think about it. Nobody would argue that each one of your brains is the same. You won't have your neural network working within. In the same way, we can't just say, I want to use AI. I use AI. Which AI? For what purpose do you want to use AI? Because every AI model is different. It's fed by a different training set of data. It then probably has a very different mathematical model, even to one that you saw that was seemingly quite similar. And then it has the output, the thing that you're being nudged towards, the recommendation, the prediction, the text, the generation of content that appears. So think, evaluate, question, what's the data? How has the model been created? Ask suppliers, ask the platforms so that you know what you should be using and what to trust. And we're the guardians of this process. We are the users. It's absolutely up to us to ensure that these systems are all built on a foundation of integrity and honor, to question the biases and to demand accountability. Because without vigilance, these tools may fail to serve us as they should. And finally, we have to demand truth in the world. The news and information that we consume, they don't just inform us, they shape our beliefs, they influence our decisions, and they define the societies that we build. Yet we're now navigating a world where AI algorithms are prioritizing clicks over clarity. They're prioritizing spectacle over substance, a world that's determined to entertain us into oblivion. So here's the opportunity. You hold the power to shape the future, starting today. We are living in the very era when these tools are being developed and they're being defined. By championing critical thinking in our education systems, demanding accountability, and nurturing the skills that make us uniquely human, we can ensure that AI becomes a tool for progress. We can create a world where truth is amplified, understanding deepens, and technology empowers us to build a better tomorrow. Thank you very much.